Welcome to Mr. Knife Guy's knife event.
Oh my God!
What you'll do is you'll wear this one around the neck, just like so. Sorry about that microphone if it's hitting the mic. I apologize. What you'll do basically is with your right hand, you go to pull the knife, and as you pull it, it locks in the out position. You can make a quick getaway, and then you can put it back onto the necklace relatively easily, and then get away scot-free.
And my husband has one of that, and I find that very hard for me to operate because I have arthritis and fibromyalgia. So
it takes a little bit of practice.
Yeah, it certainly does.
Would there be something else?
Sure. No problem at all. We got other stuff too.
Jared, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
It actually leads into mine. I have a Psycho, and one of my rationale for purchasing, I've got a Christmas present. I'm not a knife person, like I would never be skilled to stab anybody without stabbing myself. And with this knife, I looked at it like, yes, it's a tool, but this is something while it's closed, I can just brush the heck out of anybody.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about cutting myself.
And that's exactly what the gentleman who helped me with that knife, Bram Frank, that's exactly what he wanted the knife to be used for. He said that at our base instinct, the human wants to protect itself by getting into the fetal position and by going like this. This is how we protect ourselves when we're completely under stress and we're not thinking about anything that we're doing. We can still go like this, you know. And so having something like that in your hand that you can hit stuff with, or a ball peen hammer kind of thing on the tip of that thing, then that's exactly what he had in mind when he was helping to come up with that design. So you're right on point with that one. And then any knives that have non-moving parts, like any fixed blade knife would be awesome for you, like something like this. Could be used easily. You just tie a paracord around this or some sort of a beaded chain and just pull down. And that's what we call a thumb drive. And that's this is a titanium piece that's been custom made that we're going to be coming up with here in the next 12 to 14 months. It'll be something that'll be far less expensive than this particular one was, because if you notice, you can look closely, you can see that there's a fingerprint anodizing on the titanium and a carbide, hand-applied carbide edge on there. But we're going to be coming up with a Damascus version of this one.
That was a Warren Thomas.
It is a Warren Thomas piece, yeah. And Warren Thomas and I are good buddies, good business partners, and a lot of his designs are fantastic designs. However, they're out of the price range of a lot of people. And I've come across his stuff on numerous occasions and said, you know, if it was just more affordable, he could really sell a lot of those. And the problem is that he uses really exotic material, carbon fibers, titaniums, and because he hand applies everything that he does. I mean, this knife is, as small as it is, this knife is $250, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But a guy in my position with a company, you know, at my disposal, I can create something that's very similar to this in similar quality for a quarter of the price. So you guys can see something that's, you know, that will hold an edge longer than this actually, that's just as decorative and has the same sort of quality and everything for just about $45 to $50.
Is that a knuckle knife?
It's not a knuckle knife, no. It's called a thumb drive because it has a little detent for your thumb. You just put your thumb down in there, just use it quickly for a quick stab and go. And just a useful little tool, something for ladies' self-defense, just like you asked. And but we've got a variety of different things that that can be used for those tasks. But mainly, you know, when you have such limitations as, you know, arthritis or you know, not being able to see the knife, things like that, those sometimes make things a little bit more difficult. So in those times, you probably want to have something that's just a fixed blade knife and make it nice and easy to get to. Yeah. What else? What else you guys got? You guys want to see something else? All right.
Actually, that's so cool.
This one here is called the Wickus. It's a concept that I came up with when I started playing blade sports. Blade sports is something you guys can see on YouTube, but basically what it is it started off as the American Bladesmith Society. These guys, back in the day, they would forge their own blades. They make all their stuff from scratch. And, well, I mean, we're talking hammer and anvil, the whole deal. They're heat treating their own stuff. And then they go out and they compete against other guys to see how long their blade lasts and how long it stays, you know, hair popping sharp in comparison with these other guys that are American blades. And you have to use the knife to cut through the manila rope and then move on to the next obstacle, which is oftentimes a drinking straw sticking out of a piece of wood, where you set the knife down on top of it and you smoothly go right through and you cut the straw vertically. And then you do the second one right next to it vertically. And then sometimes a piece of paper hanging on an alligator clip that you have to pierce and then cut. And what this is doing is it's not only testing my ability, my hand-eye coordination as a cutter, but it's also testing the edge-holding ability of the knife, as well as the overall endurance of me going around, and it's all timed and it's all very, very precise. There's moving tennis balls, moving golf balls. I mean, the list goes on and on, but there's tons of videos on YouTube that you can check out. And to make a long story short, I invented this knife out of necessity because I was going out there, few and far between with these events, maybe once every 6 weeks, once every 8 weeks. And any other time that I'd be spending at all doing blade sports, it was basically based on design for blade sports. I wasn't practicing enough. And I was getting my butt kicked every time I went out there. I was just getting it handed to me. And I had enough of it. I didn't want to continue to be beaten by guys that were twice my age. It just didn't make sense. And so I went back to the drawing board and I restarted my design for the knife. And I came up with a knife that would help me without practice. And that's this here. So you can look at the wall and you can see that there's a laser line that's being emitted by the knife itself. The laser is here. It's located in the base of the handle and it's operated on a 3-volt lithium-ion battery. And it's operated with a momentary on and off switch that I'm operating with my thumb. And so I don't have to move the position of my hand at all. I can just see exactly where the knife is going to hit on the 2x4 before I hit on the 2x4. So I don't have to have as great a hand-eye coordination. I don't have to practice as much as the next guy because I know exactly where I'm going to hit before I hit. And this is kind of the claim to fame for this particular knife. It's the first knife that's ever been done with a laser guidance system. A lot of people go, why in the world would I use something like that for anything other than blade sports? And that's a valid question. So the answer to that one would be something like log splitting or just for showing off at the campsite.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just a fun thing, I mean, there's not a use for every product under the sun. But I thought, for my particular purpose, and for anybody who wants to have something kind of cool like this, the target price on it's going to be around $250. It's going to be made out of an American steel somewhere, probably along the lines of like a D2 or an A2 tool steel. It's an air-hardened tool steel, very, very hard stuff. And it's going to be lifetime warranty just like the rest of the Mantis knives. It's going to come with an awesome drop-down leg holster that makes you feel like RoboCop. And that's how we're going to do it because that's the kind of stuff I like to make. It's just stuff that makes people go, wow. And that's kind of the formula that I use with every design that I do. Are people going to look at this knife and say, wow? Because that's what I want people to do. I want it to be a conversation starter. I want somebody who owns a typical knife, something that's kind of more along what I would be considering run-of-the-mill, like a buck 110 or something like that. I want them to look at a knife that I make and go, that's something totally different that I've never seen before. I think I'd like to own that, And that's kind of what I'm thinking about. What's up?
You consider making a slightly smaller, little bit lighter version of that for the people that go backpacking and camping for a little bit more weight consciousness?
No.
No.
No, the weight part of that knife is necessary.
Is it called Chaos?
What's that?
Chaos.
Yes.
That would be the smaller version of that.
Yeah, that'd be a folding version of that knife. Yeah, the Chaos. But the chopping version the weight is absolutely necessary in order to get through something. The sheer ounce weight of this thing is necessary in order to pound it through these 2x4s. Something lighter would just bounce off. But if you guys want to play with it, you're more than welcome to do so. You'll feel it right away how heavy it is. It's 5/16 inch thickness on the blade stock, and I only took those little grooves out. Those grooves that are in the blade, they're only there so that it can bear resemblance to this knife here, and then people will know that it came from the same mind. You'll notice that there's these jimps, these half radius jimps, and they exist on that knife as well. So the main purpose of the whole thing was to kind of make it look similar to this one, because this was the knife that probably did the most for the brand recognition in the USA, is the Chaos Folder. This knife was named one of the top 10 knives of the decade by Blade Magazine, when back in 2010 they did an article about the most notable knives of the decade between 2000 and 2010, and this was one of them. And I was honored to be named on that list because it was up there with some pretty awesome names in the industry. Man, it was like Microtech stuff, Strider stuff, and then they called the Mantis Chaos Folder, and I was honored, absolutely. And so I wanted to. This is a notable knife. People take notice of it, and so I wanted to create something that people would know came from the same company, came from the same brain. So that's that. The ceramic stuff has done a really good job of getting us some name brand recognition as well, mainly because it's the only ceramic out there right now that sells for less than $50 and has a lifetime warranty on it. Ernie Emerson probably hates the fact that I'm doing them and making them readily available, and making them available for people at $45 because we've repeatedly tested the locks, and our locks test stronger, and they're a quarter of the price. And I can't explain why. It's just part of the design, and it's a nice knife that people come back time and time again to buy the same exact knife, and that's when you know that you're doing a good job, because people continually buy the MK1 over and over and over again. And I'm going, what are you losing them? No, I'm just giving them to my buddies because they've never seen it before and they want it, they love it, and I know where I can get another one. So there, and I'm cool. That's awesome. I mean, I'm honored to be doing something that people find to be useful, and to be creating tools that can not only save lives but get people out of sticky situations. And it's something that I love to do. I really, really do. And there's no shortage of ideas. It depends on where I'm looking. I mean, every day something new comes into mind about a new knife design, something we can do that's slightly different from the next. And there's no shortage of ideas. They kind of come in waves.
Did you go through the progression of your karambit design all the way down to the darkest bit dark?
Oh, sure, yeah. The first one ever was the MK1. This is called the Sync 1. The Sync 1 karambit was important to me because I wanted it to look smooth when it was closed, and I wanted all the lines to work when it was closed. A lot of the karambit designs that I see have a blade that kind of just puts itself into the handle, but it just kind of gets in there and doesn't really look all that nice when it's closed. But I wanted one that flowed and looked nice even when it was closed. So I made the finger groove and the spine of the blade work together to create a nice little wavy line there. And then on the handle itself, I put five little cutouts into the handle because the name of the knife is called the Cinq, C-I-N-Q. And Cinq is symbolic to me because at the time I thought about this was this exact handle design. I was in a place in northern Italy, actually. I was backpacking through northern Italy right after I had graduated from school. I was just a poor student trying to figure things out. And I was in Cinque Terre, Italy, which is five little tiny towns on the northern Italian, on the coastline. And Cinque Terre was the inspiration behind putting the five little cutouts in the handle, so I named it the Sync 1. And the Sync 1 has the Talon style blade on it, the Sync 2 has a Tonto style blade on it, and then there was the Sync 3 that came later on. And the Sync 3, actually, I came upon something. Do you have an Encore over there? Or did you sell it yesterday? I got it. The Sync 3, I came upon my first main struggle, actually, with the knives. Now, I offer a lifetime warranty on everything. And what I mean by that is, like, it's a warranty that's, like, so good that all you got to do is say, hey, I got an issue. And I personally get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And in most cases, if you bought the knife directly from me or from MrKnifeGuy, an authorized dealer, in most cases, I'll just send you the new knife and send a call tag for the old one. Red anodized was not stiff enough to keep that knife locked and perfect for the long haul. So months later, when people are actually using this thing, they're coming back to me going, hey, there's a lot of blade movement in this thing. It doesn't feel as confident. It doesn't feel as awesome as it did when I first bought it. And that's bad for a knife company, especially in the beginning stages of a knife company. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to get active on this quickly. So I immediately stopped selling that knife the way that it was because I realized that the same problem was happening over and over again. And that can put a company out of business if you don't get a hold of that quickly and take strong action. So I let everybody in the Mantis militia know what I was doing, let all the customers know what I was doing, and that I wanted to go back to the drawing board on this particular design, that I needed to come up with a new solution for that knife. So instead of just simply replacing that material with something better, I decided to go back to a whole new color scheme and do this in a gray with a black oxide coated stainless steel spacer. So the stainless steel spacer is far more, it's far stronger than the aluminum was, and it allowed for way better rigid torsion. It was leaps and bounds better than the aluminum was, and I was able to sort of salvage a design that I believed in my heart was an awesome design, but just it wasn't strong enough with that aluminum piece. So coming back with the stainless steel piece and then a slightly different color, I ended up making this knife into a superstar. And this knife right now, as it stands, I've sold more of this particular knife than any other karambit that I've got in the lineup. And as of right now, is hard to find. Like, he's got one that's awesome, but most of them, they're hard to find because I'm in between runs right now, and I've got back orders coming in at this point. So this particular knife is called the Encore. It's the MK3 VXB, and it was the last folding karambit that I've done up to this point. Then there was a fixed blade karambit that Brent and I decided to do. He had some requests from some guys that were using karambits for some really hardcore stuff. And a lot of these guys don't want to have folding karambits because regardless of whether it's a strong lock or not, sometimes if you open up the knife and it doesn't quite lock in out position or something like that, there is a risk of the knife. When it's a fixed blade knife, there's no risk of the knife ever closing on you, no matter what. And if it's a folding, there is some sort of slight risk there that some guys don't feel as confident with. And so we wanted to do a fixed blade karambit. And so I came up with a thing called the Mrs. Smith design. And it had a really small little blade on it. And I had a friend of mine from the U.S. Marines who wanted to help design that knife. And so he came in and he says, you know, I think the coolest thing about a knife, about a karambit knife like this is it needs to have a really large hole for gloved hands. It needs to have a really small blade so that people can't even tell that it's in your hand. And I said, you know, that's actually a pretty valid design. I think that's a pretty good place for us to start. So I came up with a design that I thought was kind of wild because it got the job done military-wise. It got the job done, but then it also kind of added a little something that I liked, which was it was a what is this called? This is called
G12
silver twill G10. So what this G10 has is a silver twill laminate over the top of it that kind of makes it look like silver carbon fiber over the top. And so it looks kind of flashy. And then I put this pivot on here because it actually serves as a detent into the sheath itself. And but it also kind of makes it look like it's a folder. But the blade itself is super, super small. It's only 1 inch and 1.15 inches long, which just so happens to be the exact diameter of this ring on the other side. So 1.15, 1.15, you got a totally symmetrical knife, and it's very, very small. So when you have it in your hand, you can hardly even tell that the blade is protruding at all from the palm. And that was something that we wanted to do for that one. Now, what I quickly realized when I was doing Mantis Knives is that there's a market for production stuff. People will buy the production stuff and they'll enjoy it. But there's also a market for the custom stuff. People want to feel like they have one of a limited number of knives. One of 15, one of 20. And when people started coming and asking for limited edition versions of stuff, I thought, you know, that's a really cool way for me to gain some more exposure and to get some people who are really into knives helping me to push the brand out there and get it out there. Because, I mean, the best way for advertising is still word of mouth. Yeah, social media has changed things a lot, but it's still word of mouth. It's still a friend telling another friend, hey, look what I found. I just found this really cool knife, and you guys should check it out. So I started making limited edition versions of this knife, and some of them didn't have handles at all. Some of them had paracord wrap on them. Other ones had Cerakoting of some type on them. And then MrKnifeGuy came to me and said, you know, I'd really like to do an exclusive of one of those particular knives. I'd like to have one that's only sold through MrKnifeGuy to MrKnifeGuy customers only. And I said, yeah, that's a killer idea. And I mean, there's a lot of dealers out there that want to do something like that, but they can't come up with the dough when it comes time to do something. You know, but MrKnifeGuy was right there and ready to go. And so we said, let's do, how many was it, 26? 26?
Right on there.
26 models of this knife with a black Cerakoting on it, and then a paracord wrap that was done by hand by me, and then a special Mantis Militia logo that was put on the side of it right here that kind of showed people that this was only available through MrKnifeGuy. It was the only time I've ever put that logo on a blade was on this one, and along with the 5-year anniversary one as well. But this one here is I put these cremulations on the backside, these little flat spots of the ring on the backside. It's all done by hand. The sharpening, of course, done by hand, the laser engraving. And then this is an old school engrave on the top that shows, and I say old school because it's the typical pin engraver. And it's this one's number 18 of 26. So there was only 26 of this thing ever made, and that's all there ever will be. So there's a certain market for that as well, because guys want to be, one of 26. And so that was a whole new market that kind of brought itself, came to fruition along somewhere in the first couple of years of the existence. And now every time I come up with a new knife, I'll come up with a limited edition version of that knife as well, and hope that it does well for folks. This was number 23 of 26. This one has kind of a unique feature about it as well. This one's got a little tiny pieces of thread in the G10 that actually glow in the dark. So this is a bit dark with the nocturnal edition, I called it, because you can find this thing in the dark, and it makes itself known. And the crenulations on the backside on this one are semicircle crenulations, slightly different, make it look like it's file work or a vine pattern along the backside of it there.
I have to tell my story of that. Jared, he kept 2 of the bit darks for himself, and he actually paired this up with a night vision monocular, and he put them out on eBay as a special. It was right after the tsunami, and we had the Japanese Disaster Relief Fund, and so he put these on eBay with the only two in the world of the bit dark nocturnals paired up with the night vision monocular. It was a sharper image product, and part of the proceeds would go to the Japanese Disaster Relief Fund. Well, when he posted that out there to the Mantis Militia, and we'll talk about the Mantis Militia in a bit, what that organization is, I saw him on eBay, and I'm like, I gotta have one of those night vision binoculars. So I started bidding on eBay on both of these items, hoping I would get one on my own knife design to get it back, and I fortunately won it back, and I was happy to pay the full price for it. I kept the night vision for myself, and I was reselling this, and this is one of the items that's going into the raffle today at noon. So one of 2 in the world on this collectible. I retail it for $99, which I think is a killer price on
Definitely.
it. But so it'll be yours for $5.
$5. Talk about map pricing, jeez.
Oh, sorry.
Along with some of the designs I do for my own company, I also do designs for other companies, like Sharper Image is one of them, Polaroid is another, and most recently I've got a company that is owned by Michael Hawk, who is a guy who is a celebrity that has a television show called The Man, Woman, and Wild, and he has a television show with his wife Ruth, and it's on Discovery. Is it on Discovery? I think so. It's on Discovery. Anyway, he saw the success that Bear Grylls was having with his new knife line that he's doing with Gerber. And this knife line can be found anywhere. Dick's, Cabela's, Walmart, everywhere, everywhere. And they're selling tens of thousands of these knives. They're having a great, great time with it. Only problem is those knives aren't that high quality, and they won't last for very long. And so people are going to be buying those knives, and they're going to be paying $40 and $50 and $60 for those knives, and they're not going to be lasting very long, and it's going to be a bummer thing. But he saw a potential to use his expertise in Army Special Forces, as well as his celebrity, to create his own knife designs. So Bear Grylls basically put his name on some designs that some guy sitting somewhere had created. And the difference between him and Michael Hawk is that Michael Hawk takes a very, very active role in what he wants to create. So this was a design that he came to me with and said, I'd like for you to build this for me, and I'd like for you to be able to offer my customers a lifetime warranty on it like you do with all your Mantis stuff. I said, if you show me the design and allow me certain changes so that I can be confident that it'll be strong and that it's going to last a lifetime, then I can do it. So he showed me his design, and I made very, very minimal changes to it because it was a very, very good design inherently. And this is it here. This one's called the Peregrine, the Hawk Peregrine. And what it does, and you go to fold it out there, you've got, it looks similar to the Hawk Hellion, because he collaborated his name with Tops Knives over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now, and it was called the Hellion, and it was a large fixed blade knife, but it had this very unique recurved tonto, very angular design, but the way that it looks, the geometry almost, I mean, because of the thickness of the tip of the tonto blade, it almost looks like it's too big to fit back into the handle, doesn't it? Kind of wild. But anyway, the thing that he likes about this knife, and the thing that I think is very unique about it, is these fold-out finger guards. These fold-out finger guards will allow you to use the knife confidently without having your hand slip out onto the blade during a hard use or something. Now, he wanted to patent this feature. He wanted to spend thousands and thousands of dollars and lots of time patenting this feature. I explained to him that regardless of whether he had it patented or not, that he was going to be copied, that it was going to happen. So why waste the time? Why not just why not just move faster than the copycats and just get onto something else faster, get onto it clean, and not spend the money and the time trying to protect it? Because I honestly feel that way. I feel that if you take and you have a design that has some validity to it, it's going to be copied. You're going to find a way to copy it, and you're going to waste a lot of time and you're going to waste a lot of frustration on trying to protect that design. So I said, come up with this one. We'll do this one. We'll get it to market as quickly as we can. with the strength and the price where we can. So he was concerned about the price. He wanted to make it affordable for the everyman. So this knife will be available in stores for about $69, I believe, is the price for this knife, is the target price for this knife. It's going to have an AUS 8 steel blade, and it's going to be just like this when you see it in the stores. This is a prototype, and I do see one little imperfection, but I'll pass it around so that you guys can mess around with it a little bit, if you like. Yeah, perfect. I'll pass that around, you guys can check it out. And then he came up with this other one he calls the Sparrow. And with this one, a very unique knife. Ergonomically, it fits into the hand perfectly. When it's closed like this, you can close your fist around it, and it's remarkable how well it fits. And his original design called for holes here to hold the pocket clip so that the knife would fit into the pocket like this. But quickly looking at the design, I figured if you flipped it around like this and was able to wear it like this, then you'd be able to remove the knife from the pocket and open the blade at the same time as you were coming out, similar to an Emerson Wave. So that was the change that I wanted to make to this knife before we came to market on it. And if you'll notice, it kind of looks like a gun when you hold it. It kind of looks like an old, like a Derringer or something small like that. And this was his design. All I did was build it for him. And I think it's very valid. And he wants to come up with this design and have it sold at retail for about $30. And we can do that and offer a lifetime warranty on it and be proud of the knife that it is. And so that's one of the ones that we're also going to be coming up with in 2012. And so this is probably just a couple months away, as is the other one. So I venture to guess that by summertime, these things will be totally available, and they'll be widely found. I mean, they'll be widely distributed through places like Gander Mountain and
MrKnifeGuy.
MrKnifeGuy will have them, I'm sure. And so, but my name isn't on these though. It's Michael Hawk's name on these. But I like to be involved with all sorts of projects, both knife related and non. Because after when I graduated from Loyola, I went to a school called the Art Center for Design in Pasadena and learned how to do design. And so design is kind of where my passion lies, is creating designs that are both functional and very, very unique looking. Not everybody agrees with the designs all the time, but there are, but each of them has their own reason for being. Can I go to this one now?
Please do.
Yeah. This is called the Vujade. I'm a George Carlin fan, and he had this whole bit that he did on Vujade, and how it was basically it's seeing something for the millionth time, but looking at it in a slightly different way than you did before. And what this knife is it's a balisong, or it's a butterfly knife, but it's also a karambit knife. So a karambit knife, when you look at this, you kind of go, how in the world can you get that thing to operate like a butterfly knife? I mean, there's no real way to get the handle to go around and look good when it's guarding a curved blade like that. And so traditionally, butterfly knives have straight blades and straight handles, and they flip this way to cover up and protect the blade. But if you look at this knife, it kind of looks like it could potentially be something similar to that. But when you unfold the knife and you press this button here, this unlocks this latch, and you'll watch this latch flip to the opposite side on the spring. So it flips to this side and readies the handle, so when the handle flips around all the way, the handle can go back into the other handle and lock. So it actually, because of the positioning of these 2 points on the blade and where it pivots, you're actually able to make a karambit knife into a butterfly knife. And because when it closes up, the handle itself you can see right through it. When it closes up, you're actually able to fit the spine of the knife back through the handle, which allows the curvature of that blade to fit within the straight handle. This knife took me 3 years to design correctly, and it's going to be coming out this year in the next couple months. Yes. And I'm so excited about this knife because it was by far the most difficult one I've ever done. It was even more difficult than the Garbanzo, and the Garbanzo was a very difficult knife as well.
Can we see that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the cool things about this knife were that people said that the ergonomics of this karambit were perfect. The majority of the guys out there were like, man, when I hold that knife, it just feels like an extension of my hand. It just feels perfect. So I thought, as many times as I've heard that, I better make another knife that's darn similar to it. So even though it operates in a totally different way, the ergonomics of it are almost the same. And so, anyway, you can check that out. And this one here, the button, that's how it works.
We're really excited to offer that knife.
Yeah, that's. I'm going to offer it in a few different configurations. You see, the thing about it is when I first started going to gun shows and things, and sitting down with an 8-foot table and having all my knives out there ready to sell, I would set them all out there, and a guy would come up, and he would say, "Oh, I love that knife. Do you have that one in serrated?" I'd be like, "Lost the sale. I didn't have it in serrated." Right? So I was bummed out at the fact that I couldn't provide something for every individual need. So what I do now is when I came up with something like that, I'll do it in a satin finish, I'll do it in a black oxide finish, I'll do it in a serrated and a plain edge. So now I've got 4 different configurations of the same basic model, and now I can satisfy more individuals. Because some guys prefer a serrated edge, some guys prefer a plain edge, some guys want a non-reflective surface, some guys don't, some guys want it more decorative. So it's the same basic design with a few different changes to it, kind of like what cars are doing. Cars will have a sport model or something, and they'll have something different with a little bit bigger wheels or something on it, and a couple different features. And that's kind of what I'm doing. It's along the same lines, just so I can satisfy more individuals, possibly sell more knives. Because from a business standpoint, I mean, I want to sell as many as I can, and as I come up with new designs, it's important to use the power of manufacturing to create as many as possible and get the economies of scale to a point where I can actually make a little bit of money doing what I love. That's important.
Do this for Nicholas.
Sure. This is a knife that has a cool story behind it. The widow of the gentleman who started the Mission Knife Company. Mission Knives, they're still around. They were purchased by another guy, but Mission Knives was well known in the 80s and 90s for doing titanium knives. And they had knives that sold for between $400 and $700 each. And the guy himself was in the military, and his name was John. Forgetting his last name at this point, but his wife was looking to sell a lot of the items that she had stored still after his death. And she went to one of the dealers that I have in California, and she tried to sell a lot of these blank G10 knives to him, and he didn't have a use for them. So I said, hey, I'd like to, because at the time there was no machining done on them at all. There were just these thin, long sheets of G10. And I said, I'd like to have those pieces. I can make something out of those. And so I went ahead and made these what are called EOD knives, which are explosive ordnance disposal knives that don't contain any metal at all. These are illegal in some states. Are they illegal here? No?
Nothing's illegal.
Nothing's illegal. These are illegal in at least a quarter of the states in the U.S. Because they're not detectable by metal detectors. So at airports, obviously, in the wrong hands, these things could be super dangerous. But what they're used for, what they're supposed to be used for, is explosive ordnance disposal. A lot of these mines that are located throughout the Middle East, with our troops and all, they're magnetically triggered. So if you have metal on you, or if a truck drives by or whatever, these things explode. And so if a guy goes out and wants to go ahead and dispose of one of these things, or what was the word I used yesterday? Defuse the thing. He can use one of these items to dig out the area around it without triggering the mechanism and making the device explode. So there's this one, which is a shorter version, and I had another version that was a 14-inch version that was much longer and easier to dig with. But the cool thing about what this knife did is that it inspired another design from another guy. Now, this gentleman I met along the way, his name is Nicholas Lynn, and he's a genius. He's a big fan of Mantis Knives. And the kid is, he's still in college, and he's in college in New Jersey. And he's very, very active in the Mantis militia community. And he takes a lot of the designs that I do, and he does what's called a pimp job. He likes to pimp out the knives. And it's something that some of the younger guys in the Mantis militia enjoy doing. And it's actually a valid knife-making classification. So knives are made in 3 ways. Either they're forged, their stock removal, or their modification of an existing design. Those 3 different categories are all knife makers. So there's the forging guys, and then there's the guys that are stock removal guys like me, and then there's guys like Nick that take existing designs or knives that are sort of half-made and then create their own stuff out of what's there. And this thing is a very inspired design. I love it. I think it's very valid and super cool. It does have metal in it, so it kind of takes away from the EOD part of it. But at the same time, he was inspired to create a folding EOD knife with a completely new and different locking mechanism that is very similar to a lock back, but it's actually located on the side of the handle. And he uses another piece of plastic to lock the knife in the out position. And then teeters like a, basically like a lockback knife would, except it's on the side and it fits in underneath the blade to keep the blade in the out position. It's a very cool design. It's something new that he created personally, based off of the EOD knife, and it's cool because what this does is it shows that something that we do can inspire a whole new thing, and it's something that you wouldn't even necessarily expect. And so I had a little trouble getting this thing to work exactly like I wanted to.
It's a prototype.
It's a prototype, and it's a very cool design, and I'm really proud of Nick and happy that he even thinks that the designs I'm doing are even valid to mess around with and turn into something else. So that's kind of a fun.
Actually, I'd rather not pass that around.
No? Okay. Sorry. It's pretty fragile, so.
I said I'd get it back in good
In perfect condition?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then, so
Without
basically, so what you guys can do then, I'll hand this one around because it's pretty tough to beat this one up. And
we're raffling that off too.
Okay, so keep it in good condition, no greasy hands. And then basically it's really simple and easy to do the grind jobs on these ones in comparison with steel. This takes a fraction of the time it would take to do it on steel, but it's the same basic technique on a grinding wheel. You just back and forth on it, just to try to create a clean line here, and then to do another swedge up on the top like that to create another clean line. It's only sharpened on the one, it's only ground down on the one side so that the other side remains flat. That way, if you're in the field and you want to resharpen to a nice sharp edge, just run it on something that's semi-smooth but still has a rough surface to it. Run it back and forth on that surface, and to create another nice sharpened edge. Very, very lightweight. I mean, it's that's definitely, I can see the definite danger for something like that in the wrong hands, not being metallic and all. It's very, very.
Is there a sheath that'll be coming with that one?
Yeah, the sheath is also, it comes with the knife, yeah, and it's embroidered with the Mantis logo on it and all, and so that's that. And that was a cool limited edition piece that I did because of the way that I acquired the knife pieces themselves. There was only a limited edition version of them, and I never went to distribution with them, and I didn't go to most dealers with them because I sold most of them directly to the Mantis Militia. There's enough of those guys now. There's over 22,000 Mantis Militia members now. I started with 0. I started with one guy who liked my stuff, and that was it. And so now there's 22,000 guys out there that respond when I send out an email with a new introduction of a new product, which is good because in a way, I can kind of, regardless of the design at the beginning, if I show it to a couple people on the forum or I kind of start showing it around and getting people's opinions on things, I can kind of gauge from their opinions how well the knife will sell. And I know that at least I've got a few customers out of those 22,000 guys. I know that there's always a chance that even if the knife isn't hugely popular, that I'll still be able to sell just the first original the introduction knives. Yes?
You keep talking about the Mantis Militia?
Yes.
What is that?
It's basically a fancy name for a collector's club. I took what Buck Knives had done with their collectors, and what they did was they formed a nice network of people who were very loyal fans of the Buck brand. And plenty of other knife companies, other companies of all types have done it. And what I believe truly is that knives are a passion for a lot of people. I'm obsessed with knives, and I know that there's a lot of guys out there that are a lot like me, and I talk about knives constantly. I travel, I've traveled through all 50 states selling my knives. I've done it in a car, driven 5,800 miles from Florida to Texas to Chicago and back to California, all in one fell swoop as I was going through from Grand Show last year. And so I've been through all 50 states selling knives, and it's important. And one thing I've learned is that there are guys out there that are like me that love talking knives all the time. And what I figured was if I could get these guys to start responding to some of the designs that I was doing and maybe participating in the design of the knife and in the research and development phases of the knife, that I would have not only a customer but an advocate, somebody that would go out and tell their friends about something that they're involved in. So I wanted to create a seamless integration between myself and these guys and open myself up completely, take their phone calls, respond to their emails personally, and basically have a company of employees that I don't have to pay because of their passion for the knife business. So
you guys can be a member of the Mantis Militia as well. It's basically a forum off of the Mantis Knives website. Join up. You can get yourself a set of Mantis Militia dog tags that have your personalized name or message on them. and your own serial name, rank, and serial number.
That's right. That's right.
Mine says world class dealer on it, and so you can join the Mantis Militia and participate in the forum as well.
It's basically a way to stay in touch with me, because I don't want to. I'm not the type of the company that goes out and wants to send random emails to people who may be not interested in my product. So I'm not one of those spammer guys that sends out stuff to people just randomly. So what I request is that if you want to hear from me, you go on MantisKnives.com, and there's a little area to join the Mantis Militia, which is just the collector's club. That's all it is. And you put in your email address, and what that says to me is, hey, I want to hear from you. So maybe once a month, maybe once every month and a half or so, I'll have an introduction of something fun or an announcement of something cool. And I'll send out an email that I personally write them. I think they're pretty entertaining personally. But I mean, what do you think, Brent? Are they pretty entertaining? I try to keep them with pictures and with cool tidbits and stories.
You can tell this guy's a designer because it's very, very professional. And the thing about the Mantis Militia is you get first heads up before anybody else, even sometimes the dealers. A lot of times I'll be reading things on Mantis Militia forum and I'm like, hey, how come I don't know about that? So you get, you know.
Do you talk about your pimps?
I'm sorry?
Oh, absolutely. All the pimped out designs.
Yeah, for sure.
Inundated on there.
That's all new stuff.
Yeah, that's all the new stuff. Yeah, absolutely. The Mantis Militia stuff, I mean, there's some stuff that I only do for those guys. I mean, 9, 11, 17 pieces. Stuff that's just really, really, for some reason, it's limited. Either it's limited because I wanted to create excitement around it, or because I only had a certain amount of this material. Perfect example, this glow zone stuff. I met this guy. Let's see, I have a friend of mine who works in the marketing department at Monster Energy Drink. Her name is Deonti. She's a really cool chick. And she introduced me to this guy from South Africa who had this material that he's been working on for many, many years. And he's recently just protected it with all these different patents. And if you can take this stuff out in the sunlight for a moment, what it does is it takes about 10 seconds, but it charges up this photoluminescent technology, and this stuff stays bright for 10 hours. So this little knife right here could help you walk around a dark room. You can just kind of make sure you don't bump into anything. And it's very, very bright. But I can only get my hands on a very limited amount of this stuff. So I only did 17 of them. And I made them available to the Mantis Militia. And these ones that I brought here are the green versions of them. But I sold all the blue ones because I think that the thin blue line thing with the police officers and all that, they tended to pick up the blue ones pretty quick. But anyway, that's a perfect example. I had a limited amount of this material, so I used it for the most loyal fans, the guys who talk about the brand the most, the guys who help the brand to grow the most at the grassroots level, the guys that are out there using the knife and talking about the knife. And I mean, it's pretty tough to reach into your pocket and pull out a knife in front of your coworker or your buddy and have somebody not notice that knife and say, what is that you're using? Now the next and most important thing that comes out of your mouth is, this is a Mantis knife, and I'm the only guy that has this thing. Well, there's only 16 other ones like this in the whole world. And that's an exciting thing. People like that. And it's something that I like to be able to do for people. And even though it probably is the thing that takes up the most of my time, satisfying the militia, I think it's also the most rewarding thing, because those are the guys out there that will, I'm randomly in Michigan, I'm randomly in Tennessee or something, and I'll just send out a notice, hey, I'm in Tennessee, and before I know it, I got 5 guys who want to go to a steakhouse and go have a good time and talk knives. It's fantastic. It's like Fight Club or something. And it's all over the US. It's great. I mean, I was at Peter Luger's Steakhouse one time in New York City, and the host is a Mantis Militia fan. I had to wait 2 hours for a table. No, I didn't. I didn't have to wait 2 minutes for a table. It was fantastic. So other guys, members of the Mantis Militia, they can feel the same way. I mean, you're traveling in Florida, and the manager of the Westin Hotel in Tampa Bay is a Mantis Militia member, and they got you a suite. So you're cool. You're hooked up. And I mean, it's kind of a cool community. It's a tight-knit community, and it's something that I really, really enjoy, and I'm really excited that it's gone the way that it has. I mean, it's definitely a feeling of success, and it's a lot of fun to be involved with.
Jared, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Most of your knives have, obviously, primary function. It's a knife. A lot of them have secondary, third, fourth functions. What are some of your favorites of the secondary functions?
Probably the definitive favorite, I would say, is the one that Bram Frank came up with on the knife that you have, the indexing feature. indexing at the base of the handle that allows you to control the knife as you flip it from forward to reverse grip is a very, very cool feature. With all the different features that this knife does and all the different controlling techniques that you can use with this knife, I think that having these little spots in here that are machined into the handle are probably the coolest thing. Innovation as far as simple things that you can add to a knife to make the knife more confident. And I think that's a very, very cool thing. That's definitely one of my favorites.
There's so many features on that. We were just talking yesterday how I had a law enforcement sales. He sold to law enforcement firearms.
It was the LE rep for SIG.
Yeah, for SIG Sauer was showing off the feature how he did car extractions from criminals, or police officers were telling him how they were using that against ear, against arm. There's so many different pressure points that you can use to do extraction or control or self-defense or, with that knife just has so many different features on it.
The jimps on the back of the blade are also a really great thing for that purpose. Applying pressure on sensitive portions of the human body can allow you to control the person if they're out of control. just come on, we're gonna go have a talk right now. He's gonna put the knuckle right there against that thing and just apply the smallest amount of pressure, and that's all you really need to do. So this knife has a lot of hidden features on it, and so this one in particular is one that I always point to when I'm asked that question.
I love the knife.
Yeah,
There's so many things you can do without even opening it.
For $110, this is one of the finest knives on the market for $110. Period. It's a very, very good value for what it is, I think. Let's see what else as far as the B3 keychain stuff.
The Wiley.
Wiley, yeah. I wanted to commemorate. Brett and I have been friends a while. He's an awesome supporter of the Mantis brand and a true believer in what it is that I'm trying to do for the industry. I think that the knife business has a tendency to get a little stale, and so I think that there's always a place for knives that are off the beaten path, just a different design altogether. And I think Brent feels the same way.
Absolutely.
And so I wanted to commemorate, this is my first time ever doing anything like this, a knife talk. And so I wanted to do something, just kind of show everybody that I was really enthusiastic about it and thinking about it for a long time. We talked about this about 5 weeks ago. I think the first time we talked about it was at the SHOT Show, about doing something like this. And then shortly thereafter, I thought, I want to do something special that kind of shows everybody that I'm just as enthusiastic about this as they are. And so I wanted to come up with something that would show that. And at the time, the thing that I was sort of debuting was the Pit Boss and Tough Tony. And this right here is Pit Boss. The Pit Boss is what I called this design right here. And the Pit Boss was inspired by a character by the name of Tony Spilotro, who was a Las Vegas mobster back in the late 60s, early 70s. And he was later represented in a movie called Casino with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. And Joe Pesci played his character. And he actually did, in fact, own a pawn shop called the Gold Rush. And he did use it as a cover to do all these robberies and all this crazy mobster stuff. And I've always been fascinated by the whole mobster thing. I mean, I think everybody I know likes the movie Casino. And I've probably seen it 40 or 50 times, But I was watching it one time and just realized that Joe Pesci was just a super badass. And in that movie, he was just like, short and stocky and tough. And I wanted to create a knife that sort of said the same thing. And so this knife is what his personality would be if he were a knife. Is this short, stocky, crazy, mean knife. And if you take a box cutter, an actual box cutter with one of those retractable blades on it, and you remove the blade from it, and you set it on top of this blade, you would see that the geometry is almost identical. And so the main purpose for this knife would be for a guy in a warehouse who cuts boxes all day. It inspires confidence, it's got some jimps on the back here, and the thing fits into the hand really, really nicely. And it's got a super ultra thick blade, it's a 1/4 inch thick, and it's got this unique through hole here that allows, the through hole turns into a groove, so you can actually open the knife from way down here, because of the groove, the location of it, it'll still catch the spine of the blade when you go to open it anywhere along. So it's easy to open the knife and close the knife, even though it's small and stout and stocky. And this was the original design, and this was the only design that I was going to do on this knife. And somewhere along the way, right towards the end of the development of this knife, somebody in the Mantis militia said, hey, maybe it would be valid to leave that handle the same, but do a different style blade on it, because that blade's pretty radical, and I'm not sure if it's going to sell as well as you hope it to. Because a lot of people are pretty traditional in their blade styles and the way they like their blades. So I said, you might be right. I'd like to come up with a different design. And I called the next one, instead of the Pit Boss, I called the next one Tough Tony. And Tough Tony was basically Tony Spilotro. It was instead of the character of the Pit Boss, it was the actual character, Tough Tony. So this one has a drop point style blade on it. And it was done in the same, same steel stock, so it's the same thickness. It just has a different grind to it. And this knife outsells the Pit Boss 3-to-1. And it was because of a selection. It was because of the suggestion by the Mantis militia that I was even able to come up with this at all. Because my thought was to come up with that knife, and that knife would be the one. But it was because of a customer that this knife was ever made.
We'll talk about double down.
And because when I first came out with this knife, I wanted to do something special for the Mantis militia. So I created what was called the Double Down Edition. And I took 21 pairs that were made, the first 21 pairs that were made, and we engraved into the back Double Down, kind of like a reference to Las Vegas and doubling down on blackjack and whatnot. And I did 21 of them because you want to get 21 when you're playing blackjack, right? So the first 21 were sold in pairs. And I believe you bought pairs number one and pair number 2? Okay, pair number 1 and pair number 2, which you're actually doing a raffle for pair number 2, correct?
Yes.
And so this one here says Double Down 2 of 21, and then the other one, of course, will say Double Down 2 of 21 on the spine. And there are only 21 pair. And as far as I know, all the pairs are being kept as pairs by all the people who bought them. And because of the control that I have over selling directly to the militia, I know exactly where all those pairs are now, unless they've been resold. I know exactly who they went to. I shipped them to the homes of the people who own them. So they will, in fact, be collector's items if they're not already. I mean, I'd probably consider them a collector item.
They are, absolutely.
And so, so that was this knife, and it's probably the most, at this moment, it's the most popular knife that Mantis has, is this piece here. And so what I felt like I should do is somehow commemorate what I'm doing here at MrKnifeGuy with this event and come up with something that was especially for you guys from Arizona. This is called the Wiley Edition. It's a coyote tan colored knife with a titanium nitride coating on the blade. And so it is, by all intents and purposes, Tough Tony, but it's a remade Tough Tony with a couple special features. The coyote tan G10, or the coyote tan G10 color on the handle, the titanium nitride coated blade, the serrations at the base right here, as well as the removal of one of the frame sides. You see, there's under the original version. On the original version, there's a frame and a handle on both sides. So there's a frame that's made out of a 400 series stainless steel right there that's been coated with the titanium nitride, and then you've got a G10 piece that overlays that and keeps it, basically it's like a sandwich. And then on the opposite side, you've got the same thing. You've got another frame side, and then you've got the G10 that lays down on top of it. But during research and development, I realized, after we came up with this knife, there were some suggestions. People said, hey, great knife, love it, but when it's in my pocket, it feels a little thick. It feels like it takes up a lot of room. It kind of pushes my pants out a little bit. Maybe if there was some way to narrow it down, I might like it better. All right, valid suggestion. So I took it and I went back to the drawing board with it and said, okay, how much stress does this handle have to take? How much flex is allowed without sacrificing performance? And found quickly that that entire frame side could be removed, and that you could take out about 25% of the thickness of the handle without having to sacrifice any of the thickness of the blade. So now you've got the same stout, thick blade, but you've got a more narrow handle, which will allow for that better pocket fit, and generally a more comfortable knife to hold and to use. And so that's an improvement over the existing Tough Tony piece. And this one was done especially for you guys for this event, this knife talk. So I brought 20 of these along that are especially for you guys. And they were only going to be sold to dealers, no distribution, limited, the whole deal. So that's kind of what we decided to do with this one. And it was kind of funny because yesterday, right before I came, I turned on the television just to kind of relax a little bit before I came out. And darn it if I didn't see Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner around. I haven't even seen it in like 10 years. But I saw Merry Melody Short. And I saw him chasing him around. I felt bad for him the whole time. Him and his Acme slingshot, I was bummed. I mean, he never gets the Roadrunner. And the Roadrunner never says anything except for meat.
Maybe if he had that knife.
Maybe if he had the knife, it would be a whole different scenario, right? And I think in every single one of them, I mean, am I right? In every single one, he like actually paints a canvas, and then the Roadrunner runs right through it, and then he tries to run through it too, and something happens and he falls off the cliff. Anyway, Wile E. Coyote. And so I figured, what better than to do something like that, having to do with the desert. I've always loved this area. I love Arizona. I think it's fantastic, and I thought it was a perfect example. It would exemplify the area very nicely, and that this one would be a knife that you guys might like. So that's why I came up with this, especially for you guys.
Oh my God!